Have you ever battled with that nagging voice inside your head that tells you you're hungry even though you just ate? Do you think about food all the time? Have you tried to cut back on what or how much you eat only to fail? If so, I've got the answer for you in this video. Welcome to the Trillium Show, where each week we discuss different tips to help you improve your mind, your body, and your life. I'm your host, board-certified plastic surgeon and medical director of Trillium Plastic Surgery and Trillium Aesthetics, Dr. Jason Hall. Do you know what food noise is? Have you experienced it? What if I told you that food noise is one of the most damaging psychological conditions of modern life? And in this video, I'm going to give you some tips on how to eliminate it. One of the terms I've heard from patients of mine who have taken semaglutide or tirzepatide is food noise. Until that, I'd never heard that term before. But once one of my patients explained it to me, I knew that I'd experienced it. Do you know what food noise is? Food noise is a nagging voice inside your head looking for the next meal, even if you've just eaten. It's thinking about food when you're really not hungry. It's the reason that we sit down at the table and stuff ourselves like it's our last meal. Do you think about food all the time? Have you tried to cut back on what or how much you eat only to fail? Do you feel a strong urge or craving to eat certain foods all the time? Do you continue to eat certain foods even though they're making you gain weight and unable to physically perform like you want to or you need to? These are symptoms of addiction. If you replace food and meal in that last paragraph with alcohol and drink, the person in question will be shipped off to rehab in a heartbeat. But with food, we take it as completely normal. The question is why? Why do we think that way? It's simple. We are being poisoned by the food industry. The processed foods that fill our stores have caused an obesity and chronic disease epidemic that is absolutely crippling our country. The food-like products that fill our grocery stores have been designed in research labs. If you don't know what a food-like product is, it's essentially what most of the food in the center of the grocery store is. In his book, Food Rules, author Michael Pollan describes food-like products as anything that has 5 or more ingredients, that's cooked by a machine in a factory, that has health claims on the package and is advertised on TV. It's not real food. Examples of this include things like Spam, obviously, Pop-Tarts, American cheese, which really, if you look at the package, isn't cheese at all. It's a bunch of oil and flavorings. Tastes good, but it's really disgusting if you read the label. Chips and bag popcorn, pretty much anything in the frozen section, sweetened yogurt, ice cream. I mean, the list goes on and on. Teams of food scientists and chemists work to make the products they sell as tasty and addictive as possible by altering the ingredients in them to make them maximally tasty. And they're very good at it. Salt, sugar, and fat are their drugs and weapons, and they're working to make us hopelessly addicted to their products. And if you look around, it's worked beautifully. If you have friends, family, or personal experience with addiction, you know how hard it can be to overcome them. So then the question is long-term medication the way out of this intentional, man-made crisis? No. Not hardly. But one way that we can start to break the cycle of obesity is by addressing the individual factors, the food addiction itself. And this is where I think the GLP-1 and GIP agonists really shine. Those are things like semaglutide and tirzepatide, the weight loss drugs. They act in both your gut and in your brain to quiet food noise. So how they work is, and this is kind of nerdy, but GLP-1 and GIP are similar to natural hormones that are produced in your body when you eat, specifically eat things like protein. They make you full and they can turn off the hunger signals. Now, they also do some other things, especially the tirzepatide with the GIP protein. Works in your brain. It works to minimize GI disturbances. It improves bone density. It can help you mobilize that brown fat, that visceral fat that's kind of on the inside that give people that beer gut look, and change the way your body metabolizes fats. So that is kind of why, if you're talking about these drugs, that tirzepatide is really my preferred. If you're going to pick one of the two, that would be the one I would recommend. But if you struggle with food addiction, or you're taking these GLP-1 and GIP agonists, then the following dietary. So if you struggle with food addiction or you're taking these GIP or GLP-1 agonist medications, then what I want to do is lay out some kind of eating guidelines to help lose weight, clean up your diet, get healthy, improve your metabolic health, which consequently will improve your lifespan. And we'll do another podcast directly on that. But metabolic disease, diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, cancers can all be, you can lower your risk of all of those by changing your diet. So what to eat? Big thing, lean proteins with every meal. Those are things like chicken, turkey, eggs, fish, some dairy, plant-based proteins like beans and lentils. You also want to make sure that you're eating lots of fruits and vegetables. Carbohydrates have gotten a bad name recently for, increasing your blood sugar and all of this. Fruits and vegetables, because of the fiber that's in them, lowers the spike in your blood sugar, you can eat as much of that stuff as you want. If you feel like snacking, and eating lots of protein is going to make you really not want to snack, eat things like raw seeds, nuts. In terms of grains, this is where you got to really be careful, because a lot of these grains, especially in the United States, have all sorts of chemicals on them or in them that act as preservatives that we really want to get out of our diets altogether. So if you're going to eat grains, go with wild rice, whole grain brown rice, whole raw oats, quinoa, things like that. If you look at the labels on pastas, you look even whole wheat pastas, whole wheat breads, things like that. There are a lot of ingredients in there that you don't want to eat. Seed oils and all sorts of that is really damaging to our system. So if you can't, really, biggest thing, read the labels. They should have very few ingredients, and the ingredients in them should be things that you know what they are. So if you see things like monosodium glutamate, I was a chemistry major in college. I have no idea what that is. So I don't want to eat that stuff. And if you don't recognize ingredients, you probably ought not to eat it. A good rule is that the closer your food is to how it's found naturally, the better. If it comes in a plastic bag or a wrapper, it's food that over time you really need to start looking for replacements for. So that brings us to how you're supposed to eat. Now, if you're taking the tirzepatide, semaglutide, you're probably not going to be able to eat as much as you did before you started those medications. So you have to really plan your meals accordingly. You want to eat 3 to 4 meals a day. Now, I'm a surgeon. I'm busy. I don't have time to eat 4 times a day, 5 times a day. I mean, it's just not practical for me. So you have to plan those meals out. You do, if you're not on tirzepatide and semaglutide, you have to accept hunger is something you're going to be a little hungry. That's okay. You don't want to immediately run to the cabinet and start snacking when you're a little bit hungry. Drink some water with some salt in it. I use Element packets to flavor my water. Carry this thing around, and it tastes good. I don't like water myself, but flavoring it with, they've got a grapefruit flavor and orange flavor that are really good. Really helps improve your water intake. You should be getting, from a fluid standpoint, you should be getting an ounce for every 2 pounds of body weight. So, For guys, that's anywhere between 3 liters, little under 3 liters a day. For women, 2 to 3 liters a day, 2 to 2.5 liters a day, really, for women. That's a lot of water. You got to work to do that, especially if you're not used to it. I was used to drinking, a liter or 2 of coffee a day. And that I've had to change that and really work at that over time. Again, flavoring your water helps a lot. The most important macro that you need to be focused on is protein. For protein, you really want about 1 gram per pound of body weight. So divide that by the number of meals and you get the amount you need with each meal. So for me, I typically try and get between 180 to 200 grams of protein a day. And that means you have to kind of track it. You have to pay attention. I've used all sorts of tracking apps for this personally. This is not an endorsement of any of these products. I've used MyFitnessPal, which is great. I've used MacroFactor, also great. MyFitnessPal has a lot more food in it, so you can just scan the barcodes. Recently, I've started using Levels, which is a service that comes with a continuous glucose monitor. And again, we'll talk about that in a different show, more complicated than we're talking about here. But really, your focus for each meal should be getting enough protein. Everything else is secondary. The other thing that you really want to do, whether you're dieting to try and lose weight, whether you're on a GLP-1 agonist, is you really want to avoid drastic calorie deficits. Do not stop eating. Even if you don't feel like it, you need to focus on hitting your daily protein goal. That's going to help preserve your muscle mass and kind of help your body prioritize fat burning. Things to avoid. Obviously, we've talked about, these packaged foods. You want to avoid sugary foods and beverages. Don't drink your calories. Aside from these rapid blood sugar spikes that are caused by the sugary intake with not a lot of fiber, it also stimulates you to be hungrier later. It makes you tired later. That's why people get this after lunch crash when you eat a big sandwich with a hoagie roll and lots of potato chips and things like that. You get tired when your blood sugar drops again, which happens really quickly. So you want to avoid a lot of processed carbohydrates. You want to avoid fried food, and really limit alcohol intake. A glass or 2 of red wine in the evening is okay, but a lot of the alcoholic drinks that people are drinking have mixers, sugary mixers in them, and that's also going to spike your blood sugar. Really, what I've described. Really, what I've described here is a way that we should all be eating real food, not processed food-like substances. If you're eating real food, it's really difficult to overeat. Real food makes you full faster, makes you satisfied when you're finished eating, and makes snacking something that's almost totally unnecessary. One thing that I have noticed is that after people make these changes, after they've been on the semaglutides and the tirzepatides, after they've dieted and exercised, if they're not on those medications, they lose a lot of weight. They're interested in getting rid of a lot of this extra skin that's hanging around later. So if you've lost a lot of weight, whether you've changed your lifestyle, whether it's you've been helping that with drugs, whether it's the result of life changes, pregnancy, things like that, the skin doesn't always shrink back. So you can check out a video here that will link about body contouring options after weight loss. I've kind of gone through all of those. Really helpful if you're on that pathway. So check that out. As always, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy this, please leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find the show. If you have an idea you'd like to see made into a show, have a question you want to answer, drop a comment below and let me know. Thanks. We'll see you on the next episode.